a massive space station called Harmony. Edge floated in the darkness above the blue and green planet called Earth. Commander Zixtel stood on the main observation deck, looking down at the world that had surprised the entire galaxy. The planet looked peaceful from up here, but the creatures living on its surface had amazed every scientist in the Galactic Alliance. Commander Zixtel had blue skin and 4 arms. Like all members of his species, the Centaurians, he had been studying alien life forms for over 200 years, but humans were unlike anything he had ever encountered. They were young as a species, having only recently learned to fly between the stars. Yet they showed abilities that made older civilizations nervous. The station buzzed with activity as scientists from 12 different worlds worked together, studying human culture and biology. They had been watching Earth for months. Now, ever since human ships had been detected leaving their solar system for the first time, the Galactic Alliance had strict rules about first contact with new species. Everything had to be done carefully and slowly. Dear Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of Harmony Edge, looking around with wide eyes at the alien technology surrounding him. He was the first human to be invited aboard an alien vessel. As part of the cultural exchange program, Jake was an engineer from the Earth's Space Initiative, and he had volunteered for this historic mission when others were too afraid. Jake was a tall man with brown hair and curious green eyes. He wore the blue jumpsuit of the Earth Space Initiative and carried a small device that helped translate alien languages. The other humans back on Earth thought he was either very brave or very crazy for agreeing to live among aliens for 6 months. The aliens on the station found Jake fascinating to watch. He moved differently than they did, with quick, confident steps. While most alien species moved slowly and carefully, Jake also asked many questions about everything he saw, which surprised the alien scientists who were used to following strict research protocols. Vexera, the communication specialist, followed Jake as he toured the station. She was a tall, thin creature with purple skin and large black eyes. Her job was to study how humans communicated, and she found Jake to be an excellent subject. He used his hands when he talked, and his facial expressions changed constantly, showing emotions that her species rarely displayed today. Commander Zixtel had planned a special tour for Jake to see the exotic matter laboratory. This was where the most advanced scientists on the station worked with dangerous materials that could power entire worlds. The laboratory contained crystals that glowed with strange light and machines that bent space and time. Jake entered the laboratory and immediately began looking at everything with great interest. Dr. Quindar, the chief scientist, explained how the crystalline energy matrix worked to power the artificial gravity system that kept everyone walking normally instead of floating around. The crystals hummed with power and cast rainbow patterns on the walls. Dear Quindar was nervous about having a human in his laboratory. Humans had a reputation for being unpredictable, and Jake seemed especially curious about things that could be dangerous. The alien scientist had read reports about human engineering and found their methods to be concerning. They seemed to fix things by trial and error rather than following proper procedures. Jake examined the crystal matrix closely and asked many questions about how it worked. When Dr. Quindar explained the complex mathematics involved, Jake nodded and said humans had similar technology. He mentioned fusion reactors and antimatter research as if they were simple tools. This made all the alien scientists in the room very uncomfortable. The aliens had studied human technology and found it to be primitive by galactic standards, but also strangely effective. Humans built things that should not work according to galactic science, yet somehow they did work. Human ships were held together with metal welding and basic materials, but they flew just as well as ships made from advanced alien alloys. Commander Zixtel watched Jake carefully as the human examined a delicate gravitational field experiment. The device created a small area where gravity worked differently, allowing scientists to study how space and time bent around massive objects. It was extremely sensitive and required precise control to operate safely. The experiment chamber contained floating particles that danced in complex patterns as gravity fields shifted around them. Dr. Quindar explained that the slightest disturbance could cause the fields to collapse and potentially damage the entire laboratory. Jake listened with interest and asked if he could observe the control systems as Jake moved closer to get a better look at the floating particles. He accidentally bumped his elbow against one of the control panels. The contact was light, but it was enough to disturb the delicate balance of the gravitational fields. The floating particles began to spin faster, and the humming sound from the machinery grew louder. Jake realized what had happened, and his natural human reaction was immediate and automatic. He looked at the swirling particles and the flashing warning lights on the control panel and said the word that came naturally to him in such situations. He said, "Oops." The single word hung in the air of the laboratory like a bomb waiting to explode. Every alien in the room froze and stared at Jake, who was already moving toward the control panel to see if he could help fix what he had accidentally disturbed. He did not notice that all the aliens had stopped breathing. Vexera felt her communication device buzzing frantically as it tried to translate the human word. The universal translator searched through human language databases looking for the meaning of oops, but what it found made her antenna twitch with alarm. The word appeared in contexts ranging from minor accidents to major disasters. Dr. Quindar watched in growing horror as Jake reached toward the control panel with casual confidence. The human seemed completely unaware that he had just announced some kind of catastrophic event. Jake began examining the readouts and muttering to himself about electromagnetic field harmonics and quantum resonance patterns. The gravitational experiment continued to destabilize, with particles spinning out of control and energy readings climbing toward dangerous levels. According to all galactic safety protocols, the laboratory should be evacuated immediately, and the experiment shut down using emergency procedures that would take at least 30 minutes to complete properly. Jake, however, seemed to have different ideas. He began adjusting controls with quick, confident movements, bypassing 3 different safety systems, and manually manipulating the quantum field harmonics. The alien scientists watched in amazement and terror as Jake used what he called percussive maintenance, which involved hitting certain panels with his fist until they responded correctly. Within minutes, Jake had stabilized the gravitational experiment and restored the floating particles to their proper dance patterns. The energy readings returned to normal, and the warning lights stopped flashing. Dr. Quindar ran diagnostic scans and found that not only had Jake fixed the problem, but he had somehow improved the efficiency of the entire system. Commander Zik still stared at Jake, who was now examining other equipment in the laboratory with the same casual confidence. The human had just prevented a potential disaster, using methods that violated several laws of physics and safety protocols, yet he seemed to consider it a minor inconvenience. The word oops echoed in Commander Zik's mind as he realized that humans might be far more dangerous than anyone in the Galactic Alliance had imagined. If they could casually fix exotic matter experiments while using catastrophic warning expressions, then what other capabilities were they hiding? Vexera continued to monitor her translation device as it analyzed human language patterns. The more data it processed about the word oops, the more concerned she became. Humans appeared to use the same word for everything from spilling coffee to nuclear reactor malfunctions. This made no sense to any known form of alien logic. As Jake continued his tour of the laboratory, Commander Zikstall made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. He activated his emergency communication system and began composing a message to Galactic Command. The message would report that a human had uttered a catastrophic warning expression while manipulating exotic matter technology. The fate of Earth, and possibly the entire galaxy, now hung in the balance, all because Jake Morrison had said a simple 3-letter word that every human learned as a child. Commander Zikstall did not know that he was about to trigger the largest military response in galactic history over what humans would consider a minor bumping incident. Jake finished examining the laboratory equipment and thanked Dr. Quindar for the educational tours. He had no idea that his casual word had terrified an entire space station full of alien scientists, or that his confident repair work had been interpreted as evidence of catastrophic human capabilities. The stage was now set for a misunderstanding that would bring the combined fleets of the Galactic Alliance to Earth's solar system, all because aliens had heard a human say oops, and watched him fix their most advanced technology with methods that should have been impossible. Vexora sat in her communication laboratory staring at screens filled with data about human language patterns. Her large black eyes reflected the glow from dozens of monitors as the universal translator worked frantically to understand the meaning of a single human word. The word oops had created the biggest translation crisis in galactic history. The artificial intelligence that powered the universal translator was the most advanced language system ever created. It could instantly translate between over 40,000 different alien languages and dialects, but human speech was proving to be more challenging than expected. The AI had been analyzing human communications for months and found their language to be full of contradictions. The word oops appeared in human records connected to events of vastly different severity levels. Vexora watched as her screens displayed examples from human history. The same word was used when humans spilled food on their clothing, and when they accidentally destroyed entire cities with nuclear weapons. This made absolutely no sense to any form of alien logic according to the translation. Database humans had said oops when they discovered a calculation error that sent their spacecraft to the wrong planet. They had also said oops when a simple typing mistake caused their global computer networks to crash for 3 days. The word appeared in records of chemical plant explosions, environmental disasters, and military accidents that killed thousands of people. Vexora felt her antenna twitching with anxiety as she realized that humans appeared to have only one word for expressing regret about negative events, regardless of the scale of destruction involved. Her own species had 17 different words just for expressing mild disappointment and hundreds of terms for various levels of catastrophic CONCERND. R. Quindar arrived at the communication laboratory looking disturbed and confused. He had been reviewing the security recordings from the exotic matter lab and could not understand what he had witnessed. Jake Morrison had fixed their most advanced equipment using methods that violated every known principle of safe engineering practice. The gravitational field experiment that Jake had accidentally disturbed should have required a full engineering team working for hours to stabilize properly. Instead, the human had fixed it in minutes, using techniques that Dr. Quindar could not explain in any scientific report. His repair work had somehow improved the system beyond its original specifications. Dr. Quindar showed Vexora the security footage of Jake bypassing safety systems with casual confidence. The human had manually adjusted quantum field harmonics while the energy levels were still unstable. He had used percussive maintenance on delicate instruments and had somehow achieved perfect calibration through what appeared to be random trial and error. The most disturbing part of the recording was Jake's expression during the repair work. He had appeared completely calm and confident, as if fixing exotic matter experiments was something he did every day. His facial expressions suggested mild concentration rather than the terror that any sane being should feel when dealing with potentially universe-ending technology. Vexa played audio recordings of Jake's casual comments during the repair work. He had muttered about electromagnetic field harmonics, as if they were simple household problems he had referred to quantum resonance patterns the way other species might discuss weather conditions. The human treated potentially catastrophic technology like basic tools. The communication laboratory began receiving data requests from scientists throughout the station. Everyone wanted to understand what the human warning expression oops actually meant. The translation AI continued to process human language databases, but each new data point made the situation more confusing rather than clearer. Dr. explained that humans seemed to have a completely different relationship with dangerous technology than any other known species. While galactic civilizations had developed extensive safety protocols and risk assessment procedures, humans appeared to approach problems with creative improvisation and acceptable risk tolerance. The security footage showed Jake examining other equipment in the laboratory with the same casual confidence that had allowed him to repair the gravitational experiment. He had asked questions about antimatter containment systems and exotic particle accelerators, as if he was shopping for household appliances. Vexa discovered that human language contained many similar expressions that were used across vastly different contexts. Humans said "my bad" when they bumped into someone, and also when they accidentally launched nuclear missiles during military exercises. They used whoops for everything from dropping objects to causing interplanetary incidents. The translation AI presented its preliminary analysis of the word oops, and the results were terrifying. According to human usage patterns, the expression indicated that something had gone wrong, but that the speaker was prepared to deal with the consequences through immediate action. This suggested a level of confidence in crisis management that bordered on instinct. Commander Zixtel arrived at the communication laboratory, demanding an immediate briefing on the translation crisis. He had been monitoring the situation from the command center and needed to understand the severity level of the human warning expression before filing his report to Galactic Command. Vexara explained that the word oops appeared to be a universal human expression for acknowledging unintended negative consequences, regardless of scale. The same word was used for minor inconveniences and major catastrophes, which suggested that humans either could not distinguish between different threat levels or simply did not care about the difference. The implications were staggering. If humans used the same warning expression for spilling beverages and causing nuclear disasters, then their threat assessment capabilities were either completely broken or far more advanced than galactic science could understand. Either possibility was deeply concerning to civilizations that had spent millennia developing precise risk management protocols. Darkwindar added that human repair techniques appeared to violate basic principles of engineering safety. Jake had fixed the gravitational experiment using methods that should have caused a complete system failure instead of improving performance. This suggested that humans possessed intuitive understanding of advanced technology that exceeded formal galactic education. Commander Zixtel studied the data with growing alarm. The combination of casual warning expressions and impossible repair capabilities painted a picture of a species that was either incredibly lucky or incredibly dangerous. He could not determine which possibility was more frightening. The communication laboratory received another data transmission from the main computer. Analyzing human technology records, the AI had discovered that humans routinely operated equipment that other species would consider too dangerous for civilian use. Human households contained devices that generated enough energy to power small cities, yet they were treated as basic appliances. Humans drove vehicles at speeds that would terrify most galactic species, and they did so while eating food and talking to other people. They lived in structures built from materials that could collapse under stress, yet they seemed completely unconcerned about the possibility human children played with toys that contained enough chemical energy to destroy buildings. Vexara realized that the translation crisis went far deeper than a single word. Humans appeared to have fundamentally different concepts of safety, risk, and appropriate caution. Their entire civilization was built on accepting levels of danger that would cause other species to evacuate entire star systems. The Universal Translator completed its analysis and presented a final report that made everyone in the laboratory stop breathing. The word oops was not actually a warning expression at all. According to human usage patterns, it was simply an acknowledgement that something unexpected had occurred, followed by an assumption that the problem could be solved through creative action. This meant that when Jake said oops after disturbing the gravitational experiment, he was not announcing a catastrophe. He was simply noting that something had gone wrong and preparing to fix it. The casual tone indicated confidence rather than concern, which was possibly the most terrifying conclusion of Commander. Zixtel made his decision and activated the emergency communication system to Galactic Command. His message would report that humans possessed catastrophic technology, management capabilities combined with warning expressions that provided no useful threat assessment information. The species was too unpredictable to safely interact with galactic civilization as the message transmitted toward Galactic Command. Headquarters Vexera continued studying human language patterns. She was beginning to suspect that the translation crisis was only the beginning of a much larger misunderstanding between humans and the rest of the galaxy. Jake Morrison continued his tour of the space station, completely unaware that his simple word had triggered a galactic emergency. He examined alien technology with the same casual confidence that had allowed him to repair the gravitational experiment, never suspecting that his behavior was being interpreted as evidence of species-wide insanity. The stage was set for the greatest misunderstanding in galactic history as alien civilizations prepared to respond to a perceived human threat that existed only in their own fears and misinterpretations. The word "oops" had become the spark that would ignite a crisis spanning multiple star systems. Admiral Kethmos stood in the command center of Galactic Alliance headquarters on the capital world of New Andromeda, staring at the emergency transmission from Commander Zixdal. The message had arrived through the fastest communication channels available, and its contents had triggered immediate alerts throughout the massive facility. The Admiral was a veteran of 3 galactic conflicts and had commanded fleets during the worst crises in known history, but the report from Harmony Edge presented a threat unlike anything he had encountered before. According to the transmission, a human had uttered a catastrophic warning expression while manipulating exotic matter technology that could potentially destroy solar systems. Admiral Keth called for an immediate emergency session of the Galactic Security Council within hours. Representatives from dozens of civilizations gathered in the massive conference chamber to discuss the human situation. The chamber buzzed with nervous energy, as species that rarely agreed on anything found themselves united by a common fear. Intelligence analyst Quindar arrived at the headquarters carrying massive data files about human civilization. She had been studying Earth and its inhabitants for months as part of the standard first contact evaluation process, but recent events had given her research urgent importance. The data she had collected painted a disturbing picture of human capability. Squinder presented her findings to the assembled representatives using holographic displays that showed examples of human technology and behavior. The evidence was overwhelming that humans consistently understated dangerous situations while demonstrating capabilities that should have been impossible for such a young civilization. The intelligence files contained recordings of human communications during their most dangerous historical events. During nuclear reactor accidents, humans had used casual language and calm voices while dealing with technology that could irradiate entire continents. They had treated space missions as routine operations, despite using rockets that exploded regularly during testing. Human military personnel had been recorded making jokes while handling weapons capable of destroying entire cities. Their engineers had built machines that operated at temperatures hot enough to melt most known materials, yet they discussed these devices as if they were simple household tools. The most disturbing evidence came from human emergency response recordings during their worst disasters. Humans had remained calm and focused while implementing solutions that violated every known safety protocol. They had prevented catastrophic failures through improvised repairs that should have made situations worse instead of better. Quinder explained that humans appeared to have developed a culture where extreme danger was treated as normal background conditions. They lived on a planet where natural disasters regularly destroyed entire regions, yet they rebuilt in the same locations and continued their normal activities as if nothing had happened. The intelligence analyst showed recordings of human children playing games that involved simulating combat scenarios and emergency situations. Human entertainment included stories about surviving impossible disasters and overcoming insurmountable odds. Their fictional heroes were individuals who succeeded by ignoring safety regulations and taking enormous risks. Admiral Kethmos studied the data with growing concern. The pattern was clear that humans had evolved in an environment so dangerous that they had developed psychological adaptations that allowed them to function normally under conditions that would paralyze other species. With Terra, the Security Council reviewed additional evidence about human space exploration programs. Humans had launched themselves into the vacuum of space using primitive chemical rockets, with failure rates that would be considered criminally negligent by galactic standards, yet they had achieved remarkable success through sheer determination and willingness to accept catastrophic risks. Human spacecraft were built using basic materials and simple engineering, yet they had successfully traveled between planets and established permanent settlements in hostile environments. Their space stations were assembled by humans, working in vacuum conditions, wearing only thin protective suits that could fail at any moment. Council examined recordings of human astronauts performing repairs on their spacecraft while orbiting their planet. The humans had used improvised tools and trial-and-error methods to fix critical systems while floating in the deadly environment of space. Their casual conversation during these operations suggested they considered such work to be routine maintenance. Aquinder presented her most alarming finding, which was that humans appeared to become more creative and effective when faced with increasing levels of danger. Instead of following established safety protocols, they invented new solutions on the spot and somehow achieved better results than careful planning would have provided. The evidence suggested that human civilization had survived and thrived precisely because they were willing to take risks that other species would never consider. This meant that their casual attitude toward the exotic matter experiment was not evidence of ignorance but rather proof of their species-wide comfort with potentially catastrophic situations. Zadmiral Kethmos realized that the word "oops" was not actually the problem. The real issue was that humans had just demonstrated their ability to casually repair advanced galactic technology, using methods that exceeded the capabilities of species with thousands of years more experience. This suggested hidden depths to human abilities that could threaten galactic stability. The Security Council debated the appropriate response to the human situation. Several representatives argued for immediate military intervention, while others suggested careful diplomatic contact. The problem was that nobody could predict how humans would react to either approach, given their demonstrated unpredictable acquire warned that human history contained examples of their species achieving impossible victories against overwhelming odds through creative tactics and refusal to surrender. Their military conflicts showed a pattern of smaller human forces defeating larger enemies by using strategies that seemed insane until they succeeded. The intelligence files revealed that humans had survived multiple extinction-level events on their own planet, including asteroid impacts, climate changes, and supervolcanic eruptions. They had not just survived these disasters but had emerged stronger and more capable each time, suggesting remarkable adaptability. Admiral Kethmos made the decision that would define galactic history for generations to come. He activated Protocol Omega-7, which was the most extreme response available to the Galactic Alliance. The protocol called for immediate quarantine of potentially dangerous civilizations and mobilization of combined fleet assets to contain threats. The massive communication arrays of Galactic Command began transmitting emergency orders to fleet commanders throughout known space. Every available warship was ordered to converge on the Sol system where Earth was located. Evacuation ships were dispatched to rescue alien personnel from human-controlled space. To galactic news networks received official announcements that humanity had triggered an extinction-class event, and that the Sol system might require sterilization to prevent universal catastrophe. The announcement caused panic throughout civilized space, as species that had never heard of humans suddenly feared for their survival. Emergency session of planetary governments were called across dozens of worlds. As leaders tried to understand the nature of the human threat, the official reports mentioned catastrophic warning expressions and impossible technology manipulation but provided no clear explanation of what humans had actually done wrong. Admiral Kethmos stood in the command center, watching as the largest military mobilization in galactic history began to take shape. Thousands of warships from every member civilization started moving toward Earth, carrying enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. The response was overwhelming and decisive. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison continued his peaceful tour of Harmony, Edge completely unaware that his casual repair work had been interpreted as a demonstration of species-threatening capabilities. He examined alien art and discussed cultural differences with his hosts, while military fleets mobilized to contain the perceived human menace. The irony was lost on everyone except Jake, who remained blissfully ignorant of the growing crisis. His simple word, "oops," had triggered a response that would bring him face to face with the combined military might of galactic civilization. The greatest misunderstanding in known history was about to reach its climax. Vexera monitored communications from Galactic Command and realized that the situation had spiraled completely out of control. The translation crisis had become a military crisis and now threatened to become an interstellar war. The word "oops" had become the most dangerous three letters in galactic history. The stage was set for a confrontation between human ingenuity and alien military might as two fundamentally different approaches to problem-solving prepared to meet in the darkness of space surrounding Earth. The outcome would determine whether humanity joined galactic civilization or became the first species to be destroyed for being too unpredictably competent. President Lisa Carter stood in the Oval Office, staring at the holographic display that showed thousands of alien warships surrounding Earth. The sight should have been terrifying, but Lisa felt more confused than frightened. The aliens had not made any demands or issued any warnings. They had simply arrived in overwhelming numbers and established a blockade around the solar system space. Initiative Director Ryan Walsh entered the office carrying data tablets filled with information about the alien fleet. The ships represented dozens of different civilizations, all united under the banner of something called the Galactic Alliance. Their technology was clearly far more advanced than anything humans possessed, yet they seemed reluctant to make direct contact. Lisa had been trying to establish diplomatic communication with the alien fleet for hours, but their responses made no sense. They kept referring to catastrophic events and extinction-level threats, but would not explain what they thought humans had done wrong. The entire situation felt like a massive misunderstanding. Ryan explained that the only clue they had was a reference to something that had happened aboard the alien research station, where Jake Morrison was conducting his cultural exchange mission. The aliens seemed to believe that Jake had somehow triggered a galactic emergency, but the details remained unclear back aboard Harmony. Edge Jake was having the time of his life exploring alien technology and learning about different civilizations. He had no idea that his presence had become the center of an interstellar crisis. The alien scientists continued to watch his every move with mixture of fascination and terror. Quindar had been observing Jake for days now, and found human behavior to be completely incomprehensible. Jake approached every problem with casual confidence and seemed to expect that solutions could always be found through creative thinking. This attitude was unlike anything in galactic psychology. The latest incident had occurred when the station life support system malfunctioned during routine maintenance. The alien engineers had begun following standard emergency protocols, which involved shutting down non-essential systems and calling for specialized repair teams from the nearest galactic facility. Jake had volunteered to help with the repairs, and the aliens had reluctantly agreed to let him observe their work. What happened next had left the entire engineering staff in a state of shock. Jake had examined their diagnostic equipment and suggested that they were approaching the problem incorrectly. Instead of following the repair manual, Jake had improvised a solution using spare parts from other systems. He had connected components that were never designed to work together, and had bypassed several safety systems that the aliens considered essential. The repairs should have failed catastrophically. Jake's solution had not only fixed the life support system but had improved its efficiency by 30%. He had used duct tape and wire ties, along with some creative rewiring, to create a configuration that worked better than the original design. The alien engineers could not explain how this was possible, Darkwindar had watched Jake work while humming a tune and making casual conversation about human engineering principles. Jake had explained that human technology was built on the assumption that things would break and need to be fixed in the field using whatever materials were available. The concept of field repairs was foreign to galactic engineering, where everything was designed to be replaced rather than repaired when it failed. The idea of improving systems through improvised modifications violated every principle of safe design that galactic civilization had developed over thousands of years. Dr. Amy Rodriguez arrived at Harmony Edge as Earth emergency representative to help resolve the diplomatic crisis. She was a xenopsychologist who specialized in cross-species communication and had volunteered for the dangerous mission of traveling through the alien blockade to reach the research station. Amy immediately recognized that the situation was based on fundamental misunderstandings between human and alien psychology. She began interviewing the alien scientists to understand how they interpreted human behavior and quickly discovered the source of their fears. The aliens viewed Jake repair work as evidence that humans possessed intuitive understanding of advanced technology that exceeded their own knowledge. They could not comprehend how someone could fix equipment they had never seen before using methods that violated established engineering principles. Amy explained that human engineering was based on understanding underlying principles rather than following specific procedures. Jake had not known how alien technology worked, but he had understood the basic physics involved and had applied human problem-solving techniques to create workable solutions. The aliens found this explanation even more disturbing because it suggested that humans could adapt their technology to solve problems that galactic engineers could not address. This implied that human scientific knowledge was more flexible and creative than the careful, systematic approaches used by other civilizations. The situation escalated when Jake offered to help repair the station faster than light communication array. The system had been experiencing intermittent failures that were disrupting contact with Galactic Command. The alien technicians had been working on the problem for weeks without success. Jake examined the communication array and suggested that the aliens were overthinking the problem. He recommended what he called turning it off and on again, along with some simple modifications to the quantum resonance chambers. The alien engineers were horrified by his casual approach to such delicate equipment. Despite their protests, Jake began implementing his repairs using the same confident improvisation that had fixed the life support system. He bypassed complex diagnostic systems and made direct adjustments to quantum field generators, while explaining that he was just applying basic electromagnetic theory. The alien technicians watched in amazement as Jake modifications not only fixed the communication failures, but improved transmission efficiency by 300%. The quantum resonance chambers achieved perfect harmonic alignment through adjustments that should have destabilized the entire RADR. Rodriguez realized that she was witnessing the fundamental difference between human and alien approaches to problem solving. Humans saw challenges as puzzles to be solved through creative thinking, while aliens saw problems as protocols to be followed according to established procedures. The aliens had developed their technology through careful, systematic research over thousands of years. Each system was designed with multiple redundancies and safety features to prevent failures. Their engineering philosophy was based on avoiding risks rather than managing them. Humans had developed their technology under time pressure and resource constraints, which had forced them to create systems that could be repaired and modified in the field. Human engineering was based on the assumption that equipment would be used in ways that designers had not anticipated. Amy began explaining human psychology to the alien scientists who were struggling to understand how a species could function with such casual attitudes toward dangerous technology. She described how humans had evolved on a planet where survival required constant adaptation to changing conditions. Earth was a world where natural disasters were common, and where survival often depended on the ability to solve problems quickly, using limited resources. Humans had developed psychological traits that allowed them to remain calm and creative under pressure while other species would panic. The aliens began to understand that human casual language reflected confidence rather than ignorance. When Jake said oops, he was not announcing disaster, but simply acknowledging an unexpected situation and preparing to solve it. The word reflected human assumption that problems could always be fixed. Dr. Rodriguez explained that human risk assessment was based on probability and consequence analysis. Rather than absolute safety requirements, humans accepted calculated risks because they believed their ability to adapt and improvise would allow them to handle unexpected problems. The revelation that humans were not reckless, but rather supremely confident in their problem-solving abilities was both reassuring and terrifying to the alien scientists. It meant that humanity was not a chaotic threat to galactic stability, but rather a species with capabilities that exceeded galactic understanding. Meanwhile, the alien blockade around Earth continued to grow as more ships arrived from distant civilizations. The military commanders were preparing for possible conflict, while diplomatic channels remained confused by the continuing misunderstandings about human intentions and capabilities. President Carter continued trying to establish meaningful communication with the alien fleet, but the cultural gaps seemed impossible to bridge. The aliens seemed to fear human technology and creativity, while humans could not understand why their peaceful actions had triggered such an overwhelming military response. The crisis was reaching a critical point, where misunderstanding could lead to catastrophic conflict between civilizations that should have been natural allies. The next few hours would determine whether humanity would join the galactic community, or become the first species destroyed for being too competent at solving problems. The crisis reached its climax when the stellar monitoring systems detected massive solar flare activity heading directly toward Harmony Edge. The solar storm would arrive in less than 6 hours and would carry enough electromagnetic energy to overload the station's shield systems and kill everyone aboard. Commander Zixtel received the emergency alert and immediately initiated standard galactic evacuation protocols. All non-essential personnel would be evacuated to the fleet ships, while essential staff would remain behind to monitor the automated shutdown systems. The station would be abandoned until the solar storm passed. The evacuation procedures had been developed over thousands of years and represented the safest possible response to stellar radiation events. No galactic civilization had ever attempted to protect a space station against a major solar flare, because the energy levels involved exceeded the capacity of any known shielding technology. Jake Morrison was assigned to the first evacuation shuttle, along with other civilian personnel, but he seemed reluctant to leave the station. He kept asking questions about the shield systems and the solar flare predictions, while the alien scientists tried to explain why evacuation was the only option. Dr. Rodriguez recognized the expression on Jake's face and realized that he was not seeing this as an evacuation situation, but rather as an engineering challenge. She had observed this look before, when humans were presented with problems that others considered impossible to solve. Jake asked to examine the station shield generators and power distribution systems, claiming that he might be able to suggest some modifications. Commander Zixtel was reluctant to delay the evacuation, but Dr. Rodriguez convinced him that humans might have different approaches to problems that seemed unsolvable. Shield generators were located in the most dangerous part of the station, where radiation levels would be highest. During the solar storm, according to all galactic safety protocols, no living being should remain in that area during a stellar radiation event. The automated systems were designed to shut down rather than risk crew lives. Jake studied the shield system specifications and began calculating power requirements and electromagnetic field configurations. He used a combination of human mathematical techniques and intuitive understanding of energy systems to develop what he called Plan B. Dr. Rodriguez asked what Plan A had been, and Jake admitted that there was no Plan A. He explained that humans often started with Plan B, because Plan A usually involved following standard procedures that did not work for unusual situations. This casual attitude toward planning terrified the alien engineers. Jake's plan involved manually reconfiguring the shield generators to create overlapping electromagnetic fields that would deflect rather than absorb the solar radiation. He would need to remain in the generator chamber during the storm to make real-time adjustments as conditions change. Alien scientists explained that his plan was impossible because no living being could survive in the generator chamber during a solar flare. The radiation levels would be lethal within minutes, and the electromagnetic fields would disrupt any communication or monitoring equipment. Jake pointed out that the plan only needed to work for 6 hours, and that he had experience working in dangerous environments. He mentioned that human space workers routinely performed repairs in high radiation areas using protective equipment and calculated exposure limits. Commander Zixto faced an impossible decision. He could follow standard galactic protocols and evacuate the station, which would result in the loss of years of research and valuable equipment. Or he could trust a human engineer to attempt repairs that violated every known safety. Principal Dr. Rodriguez explained that humans had survived as a species by attempting solutions that other civilizations would consider too dangerous. She argued that Jake's confidence was based on genuine human capabilities rather than ignorance of the risks involved. Admiral Kethmos received reports from the fleet surrounding Earth that the research station was facing destruction from solar activity. The Admiral realized that this presented an opportunity to observe human capabilities under genuine crisis conditions rather than manufactured emergency situations. The evacuation shuttles departed, carrying all alien personnel except for Commander Zixtel, who remained behind to observe Jake attempt his impossible repair mission. Dr. Rodriguez also stayed to provide communication support and to document human problem-solving techniques under extreme pressure. Jake entered the shield generator chamber wearing improvised protective equipment that he had assembled from maintenance supplies. His protective gear consisted of metallic emergency blankets, electromagnetic field detectors, and a communication system built from spare parts. Solar storm arrived exactly on schedule, bringing massive waves of charged particles and electromagnetic radiation that began overwhelming the station automatic systems. Within minutes, the standard shield generators began failing as their power systems overloaded. Jake began implementing his plan by manually reconfiguring the shield generators. While radiation alarms sounded throughout the station, he bypassed safety systems that were designed to prevent exactly the kind of modifications he was making, but somehow his changes improved rather than degraded system performance. Commander Zixtel monitored Jake's progress from the command center and watched in amazement as the human engineer created electromagnetic field configurations that should have been impossible. The shield generators began working in harmony to deflect the solar radiation instead of simply absorbing it. Jake provided running commentary about his work, explaining that he was applying basic principles of electromagnetic field theory combined with what he called educated guessing. His casual tone suggested that he considered this to be an interesting technical challenge rather than a life-threatening emergency. The alien commander realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. A single human engineer was successfully protecting an advanced space station against stellar forces that would normally destroy it using improvised modifications and intuitive understanding. Dr. Rodriguez documented every aspect of Jake's work and transmitted her observations to the alien fleet surrounding Earth. She explained that Jake's success was not based on luck or superior technology, but rather on human psychological traits that allowed creative problem-solving under pressure. Solar storm continued for 6 hours exactly as predicted, but Harmony Edge remained protected throughout the entire event. Jake electromagnetic field modifications not only prevented damage, but actually improved the station power efficiency by harvesting energy from the solar radiation. When the storm finally passed, Jake emerged from the generator chamber, tired but satisfied. With his work, he had successfully saved the station using methods that had never been attempted by any galactic civilization. The impossible had become routine through human ingenuity. Admiral Kethmos received the complete report from Commander Zixtel, and finally understood the true nature of human capabilities. The word "oops" was not a warning of disaster, but rather a human way of acknowledging challenges and preparing to overcome them. Through creative action, the Admiral realized that humanity's greatest strength was not their technology or their aggression, but rather their unshakable belief that any problem could be solved with enough creativity and determination. This confidence allowed them to attempt solutions that other species would never consider. Dr. Rodriguez transmitted her final report, explaining that human, casual language reflected supreme confidence in their problem-solving abilities rather than ignorance of dangers. When humans said "oops," they were not announcing catastrophe but rather accepting responsibility for solving unexpected problems. The galactic blockade was immediately lifted, as Admiral Kethmos recognized that humanity represented an opportunity rather than a threat. The combined fleet that had gathered to destroy Earth was transformed into a welcoming committee for the newest members of Galactic Civilization. Humanity was invited to join the Galactic Alliance, not as junior members, but as the emergency response specialists who would be called when conventional solutions failed. Their unique combination of creativity, confidence, and controlled recklessness made them invaluable for crisis situations. Jake Morrison became the first human instructor at the Galactic Engineering Academy, where he taught alien students the fundamental principles of human problem-solving. His first lesson began with the revolutionary concept that when in doubt, you should try something different. The final scene showed Jake teaching a class of alien engineers the basic human approach to technical challenges. He explained that failure was simply information about what did not work, and that every problem was just a puzzle waiting for the right combination of creativity and determination. His most important lesson was that the word "oops" was not an admission of defeat, but rather the beginning of the next attempt to find a solution. Jake taught the aliens that humans had survived and thrived precisely because they refused to accept that any problem was truly impossible to solve. The great misunderstanding had ended with mutual understanding, as two fundamentally different approaches to problem-solving learned to work together. The galaxy was about to discover that human ingenuity combined with alien knowledge could solve challenges that neither could face. A lone Earth had found its place among the stars, not through conquest or diplomacy, but through the simple human conviction that there was always a way to fix whatever went wrong. The word "oops" had become the bridge between human confidence and galactic wisdom.